Welcome to another edition of Unraveling Success. I'm your host, Beth DeLaForest, and today we have a very special episode. I have my husband, Adam, with me on the podcast, and we are talking in a series about couples who do business together. And Adam and I did not start out our lives ever thinking that we would enter into any kind of business together. But as life takes us through our twists and turns, so it happens that we work together a lot now. And I thought it would be really fun to share a little bit of the twists and turns and things that we've learned along the way. This year, Aspire turned 10. And so we've got a decade under our belt of working together, about 21 years married. So I think we could probably share a thing or two. So rather than starting out with what your definition of success is, I thought I'd have Adam share a little bit about how our journey worked out that we ended up working together. So Adam, do you want to kick us off of how did this even happen?
Things kind of started in 2010 when you left the agency that you were working for and started on your own. You had originally wanted to just stay at home with the kids and decided that wasn't the best fit for you. So then in 2014, decided that you would take and purchase your book from the agency that you were with. And therefore, we had to take a data file with us. And so I was the one that actually took that data file and transitioned it to our agency management system, which at the time was QQ Catalyst. And then within about, I don't know, what was it, like 4 months, 5 months, something like that.
Very fast.
The group that we were working with decided, we're going to move over to EasyLinks. So then we had to transition the data from QQ to EasyLinks. And so I played a role in handling that and kind of did all the finances and taxes and all of that fun stuff in regards to the agency so that Beth could just focus on selling and growing the book of business. And we've just kind of evolved from there.
Yeah. So at first, in 2014, when Aspire was started, how many hours a week do you feel like it took you between helping with data entry and then finances and stuff at that point?
It's hard to say. I'd say between 10 and 15, but remember I was doing all your quoting and stuff as well. So, so I was kind of the jack of all trades, things that I could take off of your plate, all while seeing patients as a chiropractor 20 hours a week as well, plus doing all of the marketing and paperwork and everything that was required for my role at the chiropractic office as well. So we were busy people, but the nice thing was that we had the freedom to pick and choose when we would work. And so, and then obviously having your mom and dad in the area to help with the kids. Our kids were small at the time. So there was a lot of juggling that took place between getting them to school and activities and having before school care so that you and I could go to our networking meetings. And there was definitely a lot of juggling going on at that point.
A lot of kids swapping. And I remember, I have a few vivid memories. At that point, I had an office in New Richmond where, I remember being there even at 12 and 1 in the morning because I had so much stuff I had to get done and I couldn't turn my brain off. And, but it was just you kind of did whatever you needed to do to get things done. So I have questions that I wrote down. So the next question that I had written down was, how do you feel like your individual strengths complement each other in business and personal lives? So I think this one's interesting. You give me your take first, and then I'll kind of add in.
We are definitely yin and yang as far as personalities go. When you hired that gal to do the Acumax testing, and when she sat down and went through our profiles together, it not only do I remember thinking oh my gosh, she hit the nail on the head with you and I, but also our employees at the time as well.
Yeah,
we could definitely see where our strengths and weaknesses kind of balanced each other out because You're definitely more the visionary. I'm more the detail oriented, you know, I don't know,
Integrator.
use integrator, a
Hmm.
little more linear, as you oftentimes will note. So that's why we're able to do what we do, I think, is because we both kind of stick in our, I don't want to say lane, but we stick to doing what we know we do best and
Hmm.
just kind of, just work well as a team, really.
Hmm.
I think over the years, there's been a lot of give and take on both sides. Um, yeah, it's just evolved. It's evolved, and the nice thing is that there's been steady growth, but it hasn't been like anything exponential or
Yeah.
anything. Like there hasn't been any like really dramatic shifts in things. So yeah, I think that's part of it too.
Yeah. So we could kind of grow into ourselves as we grew. It wasn't just like, you know, explosive growth, which, I don't ever aspire to have explosive growth because it is overwhelming and your systems can't naturally evolve. It's like it shocks the system. So, um, I think, yeah, I would say Acumax is one tool and Colby Index is another tool. Um, Both of those, I think, were really helpful for us because they're not personality tests. I don't like to put, personality tests are, verdict for me is still out with them. But I do like um, testing for your MO or your how. So how you're wired. And I remember when we were doing one of those two. I call it a test, but it's not a test. It's more of an assessment because it's you don't pass or fail it. But and I remember them saying to me, "Oh, Adam, when Adam says no to you, it doesn't actually mean no. He actually just means like it's slow down." Because then we started learning about how I move really quick, and you are much more of a stabilizer, and so how that can be perceived by each other when you don't understand it. So like I could perceive that you're trying to like slow my roll all the time, but you're perceiving that like maybe I'm just like way too knee jerk and impulsive. Whereas it's not necessarily true. Either one isn't, but it's how it feels when you don't understand how to frame it. And so I feel like going through those assessments was really helpful to not personalize a lot of things. Um, and also, I also think for me, I saw a big shift when after you read Traction.
So yeah.
Yeah, we're like, because we had already done our testing, so like we knew how things show up. But then when you sat in that book and you're like, oh, I see how this, like, it's actually so important to have. Um, that I think like that kind of just like put the bow on things for like understanding like, okay, yes, we function really different, but actually there's nothing that we would change in that. And even though there are moments where in interaction it talks about this, how there's a natural tension between those two, but that's actually like good. Like you actually want that because it's healthy for an organization to be able to have like difficult conversations and the people that will challenge each other, and the diversification of thought is really important because um, the success comes from someplace in the middle with both parties navigating and together. So,
Hmm.
um, ooh, so I like, well, of course, I like this one. How do you define success as a couple, and how has that definition evolved over time? What are your thoughts?
Well, I've heard or read this many times before, and I don't know who to attribute it to, but success is being able to do what you want when you want with who you want. Um, Obviously, you and I have talked about this before. In fact, just recently we had this discussion. But how has it changed over time? I would definitely say that as we've grown, we've been able to take back more of our time.
Mm-hmm.
I've obviously got other things going on. I'm still at the clinic 2 shifts a week, and then I've also started working with agency focus as an analyst as well. And so I have been more busy. But one of the things that I haven't had to do at this point is our both kids have their driver's licenses, so we're not running an Uber service 7 days a week
Out of our
either, which
garage.
has been really nice. So I would say, as we continue to grow and evolve, is just um, kind of, I guess, choosing which direction
Hmm.
we want to go in. I was really looking forward to the opportunity as an analyst just to learn more of the ins and outs of agencies, and specifically with mergers and acquisitions. Now that we've done two, we have some experience under our belt. And so being able to help other agencies through that process has been something that I've really looked forward to.
Hmm.
And then obviously my role within the agency, within Aspire, has grown as well. Now, I remember getting commission reports initially that were like a half a page long, and
Yeah.
now we're, I think last month we're over 800 transactions.
Yeah.
So that's quite a big jump in things as well. And then obviously as the agency's grown, revenue has grown, and so there's more to keep track of. I guess it's just a matter of scaling everything, and as we continue to grow, being able to manage those things.
Yeah. I'd say and you know who that is? Darren Hardy says that. That's the
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Um, I know for me, I would say that my definition would be more like freedom and impact, like being able to impact the people around me and my surroundings for the better, like being able to leave something better than where I came into it, than how I came into it. And I would say my definition of success, like I remember, this is so funny. I remember when we first hit 1 million in premium. And that was such this giant like goal for me. So it's so funny to think about it now. But I um remember once I saw the number like in our management system, like I saw it change over to that. I thought for some reason like that was going to be this just really giant moment. And I had this like mini realization at that moment about how like, oh wait, I thought like I was going to feel like somehow super accomplished. And I was like, yeah. So I feel like I've learned that it's like success is more of like a journey. And
not a destination. That's
yeah, yeah. And that goals are so important, and setting your sales and your vision forward is like vital. Like you can't not have that. However, realizing how anticlimactic a lot of times that they are, and like your life doesn't change so drastically, or something, your a goal being met doesn't all of a sudden make you happy. Like it's not the stuff that does that. If you're not happy with 1 million in revenue, you're not going to be happy with 10 million in revenue. Like it's, like those things don't go together. So um I also think this is probably a squirrel. Um, that oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought. That like money is the most shallow why. That if you are only doing something for the chasing a dollar, that you're never actually gonna be happy, because it's never actually going to be enough. Like my why has 0% anything to do.
This is where I'm reading the book.
Ah, there you go. It has
Right.
nothing to do with money. In fact, funny story, Adam and I built a house 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. And when we were going through the mortgage process, I had 0% idea how much money I made. I was like, what do I bring in a year? Like I had no idea. But all that just to say is like that's never been, it has nothing to do with why, you know. So I
Yep.
digress. Oh, I like this one. What are some of the specific habits or routines that you've developed that contribute to your success, like individually and as a couple?
Um, well, I'm very detail oriented, so um, this is like just a kind of a glaring example, but like my email has to be cleaned out, whereas I know Beth can let hers go for a long time without cleaning it up.
That's only my personal one, not my business one.
But because I am wired that way, I tend to stay on top of things. I'm constantly, like, pretty much every morning. I'll make a cup of coffee, maybe do a little bit of reading, but then we differentiate in the way that we handle our days. I like to get up, do some work, kind of get moving, and then go and get a workout in, usually like later in the morning. Whereas Beth gets up at the crack of dawn and gets her workout in before 6 a.m., which I cannot work out that early in the morning. So I would say just being organized is really one of the biggest things with what I do. Um, it, it's not it's not hard, but it could be very difficult if you weren't organized. And it's interesting now that I've got to work with other agencies, and I take all of their data that they give me and try and put it together. In fact, I had a call before our interview here with an agency owner in California, trying to determine where some things were categorized and that type of thing. And when you don't have your hands in it, it's not. What am I trying to say? It's hard to distinguish things when you're not in it day to day. Which, because I do what I do and I'm in it every single day, it's just it's more organized. But even if we go on vacation for a week and I'm completely away from my computer, I almost feel like a little bit anxious coming back, just because I haven't been in it for a week, which to me is a long time. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's so individually, I would agree. For me, I mean, our morning routines are different, but they work for both of us. Like for me, I anchor myself to certain routines. So like I have to wake up and I'm up very early, but I have to get my workout done first. If I don't, I literally spend the rest of my day talking myself out of doing a workout. So I figure it's best to get myself in the gym and I'm halfway through my workout before I've actually even woken up. Works out great. But all to say too, I think is a really good point that you made versus like what my morning routine is a lot of times there's this push for this like wake up and hustle and you got to wake up and really early and do this things this certain way in order for you to see success. But like your morning routine looks really different than mine, and they have to like work for the individual because there's not just only one way that works. So, but for me, I would say my morning routine is a big deal. I get up at 4:15. And I'm not in the office until 9, but that whole time, like I have workout, then I journal, then I do a devotional, then I do Darren Hardy. I look at my day, I check in with my team on Slack, and I kind of just get myself prepped, and then I get ready and go in. And it's amazing but I'm not in a rush. My hair's not on fire. I do it at a leisure pace because I don't want to show up at work like frantic with my hair on fire. So I have to give myself space and room for like life to happen or a phone call to happen or something. So how about as a couple? We talked about it individually, but what do you think habits, routines that we've developed as a couple that have helped us?
Well, we've been doing pretty much a weekly date night for I don't know how long now. It's been quite a while. But one of the things you brought up too that has really helped me is doing the Darren daily. I think we've been doing that for over 10 years now. I think it's been probably as long as we've had the agency. And that's just a great way to start the morning off with either something like business related, personal related, just to be a better business owner and a better leader. And have just gotten a lot from his. We're talking about Darren Hardy, by the way, if people aren't familiar. And we've done some classes through them as well, and seeing productivity as one of them, and just the things that we've learned through doing those things. Like we always talk about time blocking and time management, and that's when you have a lot going on, it can be difficult. One of the things that I do is I try and put things in my calendar because they're more likely to get done if I actually have them in the calendar, whether that be
Yeah.
a workout or a meeting or, you know, we're always, we base a lot of our day off of what our calendar looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the other thing is too, is like you had a question in here about, you know, work life balance. When I read that, it made me think of Grant Botma's book, The Work Life Harmony,
Mm-hmm.
um, and how you go through seasons. Like when we were first starting out 10 years ago, that was a very busy season because we were just trying to get our feet on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Starting from scratch, there is no income, so we just had to slowly build. And so, but then other seasons, you're going to have more free time. This October, there wasn't a week that either you or I were not out of the country, you were at multiple conferences. You helped
Mm-hmm.
clean up after the hurricane in Florida with some friends. And so we would have never been able to do that 10 years
Mm-mm.
ago. Like
No.
there would be no chance. So it's been definitely a journey, but there's been times where things have been super intense and busy from a business standpoint, and then there's been other times where it's like, oh, this isn't so bad. And that tends to be my position within the agency as well. As I feel like I'll have a couple days where things are like, I wouldn't say my hair's on fire, but things are like, oh my gosh, I got so much to do. And then other times of the month where it's like, oh, this isn't usually like that first week of the month is a little bit more quiet, and then things pick up after that as we get commission statements and that type of thing. So
Yeah. It's funny. I just this morning was talking to Chloe, our daughter, about the concept of a time wave, which is something we talk about in the agency all the time. And it's actually something that Kelly Donahue Piro talks on. But there's this cycle of things where, oh, and this is just normal. It's normal in like insurance operations in all aspects, both, you know, on Adam's side and then in daily operations with the team. But like where all of a sudden you have like, oh, you have some free time and you had a little wiggle room and it's all pretty like, you know, easy. And then all of a sudden you have this like insane amount of things where your hair is on fire. And like it's actually just like the natural wave of things, but she calls it the time wave. So our
mm-hmm.
daughter called earlier and she's under a bit of pressure right now for a variety of reasons. All just, you know, learning to soon be adulting. And I said, oh, this sounds like the time wave. And I explained the concept to her and she's like, yeah, that's what it is. I'm like, it's life. It's a time wave.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's a good one. How do you manage disagreements or conflicts that arise from mixing business and personal relationship?
I'll defer this one to you first.
No, you go. There's really nothing you're going to say that like we both know how this rolls.
Uh, um, ask the question again.
Okay. How do you manage disagreements or conflicts that arise? I don't really feel like we run into them from mixing business and our personal relationship. I would just say, how do you manage conflicts when they arise, especially like when you're work together and are in your personal lives together? Like, how do you? That's a lot of time and to spend with one person. And I mean, you just think about like even just in a regular like marriage, like there's so much opportunity, especially when you have kids involved, right? For like conflict, and then you're gonna add business on top of it. So like, how do you feel like that is best managed, or what are some things that we do to manage conflict?
I would say one thing that we both have developed over the years is to um, develop a lot of tolerance for one another. Not and Beth and I do not fight a lot, but when there is conflict, try and see it from the other person's point of view.
Yeah.
Um, and I think part of like going through the Kobe and the Acumax and that type of thing, I tend to, now that I understand things a little bit better, tend to be more like, I don't want to say agreeable, but more like, okay, I understand where Beth's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And honestly, at this point, we've worked together long enough where I can like almost foresee, and I know that you can as well, like where issues are gonna arise.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Even just like a week ago, when I was like, you were referencing something with a certain tone and body language, and I was like, why are you doing? I mean, I knew why. I just had to get it out of me. So
I told
anyway,
you. I told you.
but I don't. I would say, yeah. And then the other thing is just being really good at communicating.
Yeah.
That's, neither one of us are hot headed. We don't tend to yell and argue. But just like sitting down and like, making sure that I have a good understanding of where you're coming from and why, and um, you know, kind of being the same way. And just the fact that I'm in like our day to day, like financials and everything, like, I, can say like, hey, yep, we're going to go ahead with and do this, or, we're going to hold off on this for this time. And a lot of times it's not even, when we have a disagreement, it's a matter of saying like, okay, like we'll do this, but we're not going to do it right this second, you
Yeah.
know? So,
Or
um,
just like strategizing around it versus, yeah.
planning has been huge, and that's something that as we've gotten further into business, we have a bigger team, and so planning has been a big, or much more important, that we're taking into account our team as well. In planning, we do a quarterly planning meeting with our entire staff, and then obviously you and I kind of do our own as well. So
Hmm. Yeah, we do a lot of planning. The team in general is wired like they, the high majority of them like to plan. So that's helpful too because everybody is, on board and participating and not only that, but get excited about it. So like if I buy them a planner for the year, like that's amazing, especially if it's with really cool pens. I'm the same way. And so it helps when we have a team that really enjoys the planning process. But yeah, I would say as far as disagreements, like I would say one of the biggest pivotal moments was when we did, Acumax Colby and then understanding like the concepts and traction. And so understanding the roles that people play and why. And so when you understand those concepts, the way that they're presented, it takes the personalization out of it. And then you can also understand like the way the other person's perceiving things or responding to things or whatever has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with just like how they naturally are as a person. And so I think that diffuses so much to begin with. Like I know not only did I feel that between Adam and I after we did our assessments, um, but I saw it in my team as well that everybody, there were certain people that would have like some strife at times, and then they realized how differently they were wired and the things that were upsetting them about the other person had nothing to do with them because it's so easy to personalize things. So I think that, and I also I would echo what you said. Like neither one of us we're not hotheads, and we don't get ugly with like, fighting or anything like that. So thank God it's been not a big part of business. Um, all right, let's see here. Um, so I think we already talked about this. We could probably talk a little bit more. Like, how do you divide roles and responsibilities in your business to play on individual strengths?
um, well, you and I kind of divided things up from the get go, so
Yeah.
uh, there really is uh, there's really no strife when it comes to our roles and responsibilities
Mm-mm.
within the agency. There have been times where we've kind of either had to adapt or delegate, which we talk a lot about,
Mm-hmm.
delegating to staff in various capacities.
Mm-hmm.
So just as we've gotten more busy, like one of the things that became apparent when I started working as an analyst was I didn't have the time to sit down and go through all the mail And so one of our CSRs has helped taking over doing like scanning documents into the system and that type of thing. So, but other than that, I mean, you've always kind of been the front office, and I've always kind of been the back office, and that's just kind of the way that we've worked. And so that funny enough, one thing that actually, Beth, this could have been like something that would surprise you. I actually was licensed in P&C health when I was how old was I? I was 22, 23.
Yeah,
It's
you
like
were in college. It would have been when you were in your undergrad.
yeah, yep. One of the guys that I coached football with, I coached a high school football team, had an agency, and so I actually started doing a little bit of work for him, and then actually ended up decided to go into the chiropractic field. So that didn't last very long, but I was licensed. I think. Well, actually, you were licensed at the time too, because that's when you were.
Yeah.
That's started when you were started with a different agency. So, um, yeah, it's been it's been. It's just kind of always has been the way it is. And it's funny too, because we talk about looking back 10 years and like kind of like you were talking about being in the New Richmond office, which we had a short office for a short time. But
Mm-hmm.
I remember like putting desks together and painting walls. And
Oh my
like,
gosh,
I
so
mean,
much painting.
we did all of that. I mean, to be honest, at the time, we didn't have the money to pay someone to do it.
No,
So did all of it. I remember you trying to set up a remote login,
I know.
log me in when
Yeah,
we have OneDrive at the time, or having internet issues. It's kind of funny to look back and think, oh man, like the stuff that you had to deal with that you like
right.
now I don't think about. So
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like as far as how we've divided stuff, it was almost just like a natural, like we just fit into our natural roles and we both just kind of ran with them and have developed them over time in a way that fits us individually. But I think part of that though, and this is where I think it might, we wouldn't be able to speak well to this, but like what if you have two visionaries? What if you have two integrators? Like from a traction standpoint, like you and I are blessed in the respect that our strengths and weaknesses are really opposite of each other. And so it's an easy, I mean, there's, when you don't understand it, there can be some like butting of heads because your perception, you don't understand how well the two can work together when they're really clicking on all cylinders. But I can see that there would probably be, depending, I would say we're just lucky to have the dynamics that we have. Um, and that the role, like as the strengths and weaknesses are just naturally kind of fit. And so we just kind of like have done our own thing and it's
yeah.
worked.
Well, and I think it would be one thing too if we hadn't started out in this way. Like if
Mm-hmm.
I were to just quit everything else and just say, "Oh, I'm going to come work for the agency," that I think that change would be a lot more difficult on both our ends.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas because we've grown with one another and grown the agency together, it's just kind of naturally evolved. And actually, I've had other what do I want to say, patients slash friends that have tried to work with spouses, and it like they found out like really quick that it's just if we're going to stay married, I can't work like directly with that person. And it might be because they're two visionaries or they're two integrators. I don't know the exact dynamics, but
Mm-hmm.
there's never been a time where I've been like, I'm quitting. We can't, if we want to stay married, I can't do this. It's just always kind of just worked itself out, I guess. So, and I guess we're probably pretty fortunate in that regards too.
Yeah, I definitely, I definitely think so. Um, that which is kind of funny. It's like that what we were talking about segues into our next question, which is what advice would you give other couples considering going into business together, or maybe one spouse joining their business?
I've heard a lot of people say just don't do it. I mean, I think it totally depends on the couple,
Mm-hmm.
because like couples, like I said, when we sat down and looked at our Acumaxes, like we were exact opposites, which
Mm-hmm.
both the same that this would never work out. If we were two integrators or two visionaries, I don't think that we would be able to have the setup that we do.
Yeah.
I would say. like as far as advice goes, is just to be really open and honest in your communication,
Mm-hmm.
um, and uh, be understanding, be able to forgive, and also be able to admit when you're wrong too. That's I think part of what makes this work. Um, but yeah, and then the other thing is too is like, you know, we I feel like you and I don't cross the line with this, but I know couples that will say like, leave the work at work, and like when you're home, it should be more focused on like personal and family, that type of thing. But you and I don't think we've kind of either, like when we were starting, it was just kind of all on all the time, and
Mm-hmm.
business was, whereas now it's, you and I kind of have our roles within the agency, but as far as the day-to-day operations, we're not like in it, being that we have staff, we're not in it in that regard. It's
Mm-hmm.
more, it's become more of managing the people in the I don't want to say problems because I can't say so we have a ton of those, but it's definitely evolved. And I think our what am I trying to say? Our relationship has evolved as well, not only from a business standpoint, but I think personally as well. Maybe that's just part of us getting older. I don't know. More wise.
Yeah, right. I would say for me, I think that it would have been helpful if we did our assessments earlier so that we had a better understanding earlier on. Not that
Yeah.
this is some like episode pushing assessments, because it's not, but it's been really helpful both like in our relationship and understanding the dynamics of like each other's how, which is so funny because I mean, Adam and I met when we were 19 turning 20. So and we're 44. So you do the math, it's been a long time. But it's funny how long you can live with somebody. And when you have those assessments and you're like, "Oh yeah, okay." And you really understand it from like a different perspective. So I feel like that was probably the piece that like really helped. Like I feel like that really helped us a lot too. And not that things weren't like bad beforehand. I think it just brought our level of understanding to a different level. Um, and let's see. Okay, last question. If you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice when you started, what would it be?
When we started the agency.
Yeah.
Oh man. Um, One piece of advice. Just understanding that it's a process. It was, I remember when you and I were putting together the business plan for, um, what was the program? Score?
Score. We use
Score,
score.
yeah.
Yeah.
I remember like it all seemed so daunting at the time, whereas now you look back, it's kind of like you talking about the when our premium for the agency reached when we would reached 1 million, and when we started, like that was a really really big number, and you look back and you're like, wow. Or the when you went through the Babson program,
Yeah.
you needed help putting together numbers for
Yeah.
projections then. And, looking back now, that was in 2019. So it's been five, going on 6 years. Like the progress that we've made has been
Yeah.
pretty, pretty incredible. So and the other thing is too, and you and I talk about this, is like we talk about eating the frog,
Yeah.
um, doing the hard stuff, getting it off your plate. We've definitely had challenges and frogs that have needed to be eaten, and
Yep.
obviously staff issues that just I think are natural in any company,
Mhm.
not just ours. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'd say just realizing that it's a journey. One thing too, and you and I have talked about this, but it's a lot of it is the habits and the things that you do daily
Mhm.
that just kind of, it's the monotonous things that need to be done, but are what eventually essentially leads to success. Are
Yeah.
are those monotonous decisions?
Mastering the mundane.
Mastering the mundane. Yep.
Yep. Yeah. I am trying to think of what mine would be. I um I guess I think mine would probably be that when I first started, one of my things that I was like, oh, as soon as I can hire people, I'm going to be like set free. Like that's going to be the moment where I feel like I have freedom. And it was the hardest part. It's been the hardest part is having a team, right? Not now, but when I first started like hiring people. And boy, was that a learning curve. Like um building a book of business is like really easy compared to building a performing team that is correct culturally. Like that's actually hard. That's hard.
Mm-hmm.
However, that also is actually my favorite thing. That's become like my number one favorite thing that I could just talk about forever. And right now within our organization is really proof of that. But the amount of failure that had to happen to for me to learn, apparently I'm a like slow learner or something, but just like having to fail forward through that. Like I thought that as soon as I got to a point where I could hire people, then I would like have freedom. And it was like not that was not the experience. And that's not the norm. That's normal. My experience was a normal experience. And so I had to learn by failing forward. So I would say that would be probably be mine. Um, well, I think that about wraps it up. Do you have anything you want to add before we close the podcast out?
No, no. I would say, it's been a great 10 years, and we've definitely grown. But we've got a lot of years ahead of us too. So
Yeah.
anything that we can do to help, not only other agency owners but any business owners too that are looking to go into business with one another. I know that there's some programs out there that, like some classes and stuff that you can take in regards to like running a business with your spouse and that type of thing. But yeah, everyone's going to put their own kind of personal touch on
Mm-hmm.
things. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's all I got.
Yeah. Well, I echo your sentiment. So, all right. Well, if you would like to get in touch with Adam or I, and we will also post in show notes the link to Darren Daly that we were talking about early. Feel free to reach out to us. We would love to be a resource for you, and we're here to help.